Is your cold making it hard for you to get to sleep and leading to a bad morning? Switch to Mucinex Night Shift for fast, powerful nighttime multi-symptom cold and flu relief. Mucinex Night Shift fights your worst nighttime symptoms to help you get to sleep and wake up ready to go. Mucinex Night Shift. It's comeback season. Use as directed.
Hey, it's me, the Quenchies. I'm that late afternoon craving you just can't shake. Wait, what's that? Welch's Grape Aid? No! Made with real fruit and no added sugar, nothing answers the call of the Quenchies like Grape Aid. Got the Quenchies? Grab a Grape Aid in your juice aisle.
Since last week's election, there's been a whole lot of Monday morning quarterbacking about what exactly went wrong for the Democrats. Did they fail to communicate the stakes of this election? Were they too flip about the economy? But I wanted to talk to Caroline Kitchener, who covers abortion for the Washington Post, because she didn't wait to understand how well the Dems were communicating when it came to one of their signature issues.
Well, going into the election, I really wanted to know, is abortion going to be enough to sway people? Is abortion actually going to be enough to change somebody's mind on the presidential race? I actually started by looking for people that were really torn, more independent or Republican-leaning voters who cared about abortion rights and because of abortion were really torn. And I had a really hard time finding people. What I did find a lot of were people that cared very deeply about abortion rights, but who didn't really see that as connected to the presidential race. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Looking back, Caroline's reporting seems prescient. She spoke with one voter after another who said they were all for abortion rights and the GOP, Trump in particular. Take Emily Jones in Arizona. She was thrilled to mail in her vote early and felt strongly about preserving the right to reproductive health care.
Before the abortion bans took effect, she had an ectopic pregnancy and, she did receive care that, might be more difficult to get now if you're in a state with a ban. And so she did care very deeply about this issue, but she voted for Trump and she voted for the abortion rights ballot initiative. Both her and her husband, who I also spoke to, voted the same way.
In the end, Emily just didn't believe a Trump presidency would have much to do with her bodily autonomy.
I think you did see President Trump trying very hard to back away from this issue, to kind of convince people that he wasn't going to go further on it. And she believed him, and a lot of the women that I spoke to did.
This is how it went, not just in Arizona, but in Missouri and Montana. All three states helped put Trump back in the White House, and all three ushered in constitutional amendments that preserved the right to choose. Do you think these pro-GOP, pro-choice voters are going to get what they expect over the next 4 years?
I really think it's impossible to say. I would be shocked if there was a national abortion ban, right? There's just not the support for it. But the administration could crack down in very, very significant ways.
Today on the show, some Americans chose to preserve their right to abortion last week. But with Donald Trump headed to the White House, how much will these state-by-state efforts matter? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance. They'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. This episode is brought to you by Sax.com. There is joy in finding the perfect gift for the ones you love, but it can be a challenge. Sax.com's holiday gift guide makes it easy. Whether you are surprising your hard-to-shop-for sister with a Chloe bracelet bag or gifting your partner a memorable scent from Gucci. At Sax.com, there is holiday inspiration for every personality on your list. If you go to their website, there is even a tab specifically for gifts where you can hunt for the perfect item for the pickiest shopper in your life, from Prada sneakers to Gucci lipstick. Sax.com's handpicked guide can help take the stress out of the holidays. And don't forget about yourself. You can add instant cheer to your home with some bright decor or bundle up in a scarf coat from Totem to stay warm all season long. Find gifts guaranteed to bring joy to everyone this holiday season at Sax.com. That is Sax.com for the ultimate holiday gift guide and all the shopping inspiration you need. Can you go back in time with me? Can you tell me a little bit how Democrats saw abortion going into the 2024 election cycle? I have such a strong memory of right before the election, this rally in Texas, where it was so striking to me that Kamala Harris was talking all about abortion, as was Beyonce, who was also there.
Because you all know, Texas is home to one of the most restrictive abortion bans in our country. In Texas, abortion is banned from the moment of conception.
And not mentioning the border at all. When you're in a border state where Greg Abbott has a lot to say about that, it just struck me wow, they're really leaning into this issue. How did you see it?
Absolutely. I think they thought that issue was going to win them the election. And I think a lot of people did, not just Democrats. It was really sort of a wild card, right? It was the first presidential election since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And we have seen just again and again and again since the Dobbs decision, we have seen people, and especially women, turn out in just massive numbers, unexpected numbers, to vote for abortion rights. And you really saw that issue carry Democrats in the 2022 midterms and really stave off a expected GOP wave. So especially once Harris became the candidate, she has been a spokesperson for this issue, I would say always, but especially since Roe was overturned. She has been out there. She's been at abortion clinics.
I would say it's her strongest issue, to speak about. She speaks so passionately about this.
She really does. And she speaks in specifics. So I was really struck during the debate just how specific she got about these scenarios.
Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband.
The way that she named the women that have been affected and distilled their stories, it was powerful and it was striking. And I think it was both kind of the coupling of, we know that this is an issue that that people are really upset about, and that turns out not just Democrats, but also independent and Republican-leaning women. And also here in this new candidate, there's a very effective messenger for it. So I think for both of those reasons, it really became, if not the centerpiece of the campaign, certainly one of them.
So clearly abortion was not an issue that resonated in the way Democrats hoped it would. But at the same time, there were these ballot measures about abortion, and those turned out kind of in an interesting way. A couple of states, we saw a rejection of the expansion of reproductive rights. But in most of the states, people voted to expand access to abortion, right? Just give me a general layout of how those ballot initiatives turned out.
Well, in the majority of the states, voters did come out, as they have regularly since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and they voted to expand or protect access to abortion, or protect abortion rights in the state constitution. I would say the most significant of those measures was, or those victories for abortion rights, was the one in Missouri. This is the first time ever that we've seen a state with a total abortion ban. I mean, Missouri's ban is one of the strictest in the country. Now that will be taken away. Abortion rights will be restored in Missouri because of that vote.
How did Missouri go in the presidential race? It went for Trump, right?
Oh, yes, very much for Trump. And for, in the Senate race, too. Very, very red.
We talked about how you spoke to voters ahead of time about how abortion was playing into their thinking, especially on the presidential race. And I spoke to a couple of voters, too, ahead of time. It struck me that I wasn't sure whether voters who were supporting the GOP but also supporting overturning an abortion ban thought Trump was pro-choice or just didn't care about abortion that much. Like, it wasn't a priority for them. Even if they thought it was important generally, they were like, listen, I'm just not prioritizing that this cycle. How did you end up thinking about that?
Well, I think it was certainly a mix. I mean, I talked with plenty of people who just said, look, I care about this, but it's really far down my list. I care about a lot of things. I care about the economy. I care about immigration more than I care about abortion. And that's how I'm making my decision. And then I would say there was sort of the bucket of voter for whom this was a top issue, but they just felt like there was nothing more to be done about it. I mean, it is true that, this issue now is in the states. And you've seen, with Biden being president, as Roe was overturned, there's really not that much that a Biden administration or a Harris administration could have done to restore abortion rights nationwide. And I think people recognize that. I think that voters recognize that. What I think was much less recognized among the people that I talked to, especially people who were kind of in this, independent and Republican-leaning women group that we're talking about, was the things that a Trump administration could do to crack down on abortion access.
Right. If it wants to, which remains a little bit hazy to me. But before we get into that, I do think it's worth lingering a little bit on just how much of a pivot Donald Trump made when it comes to abortion. Like, I was sort of reading back through headlines from a year ago. And back then, it was so interesting to me because Donald Trump was running Facebook ads in Iowa, characterizing himself as essentially the most pro-life candidate for president ever.
Living up to his promise, Roe versus Wade was overturned. Thousands of unborn children say thank you. President Trump fighting every day for the culture of life and for those who can't fight.
It was a striking ad. It was all about abortion. It was all about Trump has given you the abortion bans that are out there. And then that all changed. Like, do you remember the moment it changed?
There was a lot of back and forth. I would not pin it to one moment, but there were a series of things that happened from the spring to the fall that just made anti-abortion activists angrier and angrier and angrier. I mean, I thought the most fascinating 24-hour period was in the early fall. It was just on the heels. A couple of days earlier, JD Vance had gone on the Sunday shows and said, we would veto a national abortion ban.
And this is JD Vance, who has been pro-national abortion ban, to be clear, right?
He actually has said that he would like abortion to be illegal nationwide. He said that a couple of years ago. This issue, I would say, is clearly more important to him than it is to Trump. But there was this period where they were doing all these things to back away. And then Trump came out and seemed to strongly suggest that he was going to vote for the ballot initiative in Florida that would restore abortion rights in Florida. And the anti-abortion movement went nuts because that is something that they have been fighting so hard against, that ballot initiative in particular. And less than 24 hours later, he came out and he made the opposite statement. He said, this is a bad ballot initiative. I will not be voting for it. And it was just fascinating because it really showed, I thought that 24-hour period really showed how he was walking this extremely fine line between trying to appeal to these, moderate independents and Republican voters who care about abortion rights without going so far as to alienate his base so much that they wouldn't vote for him.
Is there a sense among the voters you spoke with that if they could secure abortion rights through a ballot initiative locally, then they kind of don't need to worry about how the federal candidates, people like JD Vance and Donald Trump, think about abortion?
Absolutely. And I think that we saw this play out. I think Democrats assumed that having a ballot initiative for abortion was in a swing state was great for them. It was really helpful for them because it was going to drive turnout and was going to bring all these people that wanted to protect abortion rights. And while they were doing that, they would also vote for Harris. That's just not what happened. And I spoke with one pollster who conducted a bunch of focus groups who said, she thinks it could, and this was before the election, but she said she anticipated, and I think she was right, that it actually could have the opposite effect, where it sort of, the term she used was it gives people an off-ramp. If they care about abortion, well, good, they can tick that off. They can address that on the ballot initiative, and then they can be free to vote for whoever they want for president.
Is that idea that you can secure your rights locally and not have to worry about the federal level, is that correct?
And not necessarily, no. And I should say, not all states allow you to do one of these ballot initiatives. So like Texas, you're not going to see a ballot initiative in Texas because of the sort of all of the hoops and things you have to jump through to do that there. But I think what people really don't recognize is the extent to which a Republican president who is hostile to abortion rights could impact abortion nationwide through agency actions. Things that the Department of Health and Human Services can do, things that the Department of Justice could do. That was really something that was not in the ether with the people that I talked to.
When we come back, what abortion rights might look like under another Trump administration. This show is brought to you by Discover. Have you heard about Doublenomics? It's okay if you haven't. It's extremely niche and practiced by Discover. Here's an example. Discover automatically doubles the cash back earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back into $300. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. This show is brought to you by Discover. Have you heard about Doublenomics? It's okay if you haven't. It's extremely niche and practiced by Discover. Here's an example. Discover automatically doubles the cash back earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back into $300. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. In terms of what happens when Donald Trump actually takes office, the president-elect has been vague about what policies his administration is going to pursue. As she said earlier, Caroline Kitchener thinks a national abortion ban is unlikely. There's just not enough support for it in Congress or the country at large. But GOP leaders have not been quiet about other ways they might limit reproductive health care once they're given control of federal government. Conservative think tanks have said the Department of Health and Human Services is key to their plans. And there's reason for that.
Since Roe was overturned, you've seen anti-abortion activists zoom right in on abortion pills. More than 50% of abortions that happen now are medication abortions with pills. Now, the Department of Health and Human Services and the FDA, they have a lot of power over that medication. So, you've seen a series of court cases that have really taken aim at the abortion pill, particularly mifepristone, which is the first drug in this 2-drug regimen for abortion pills. And what you've seen is anti-abortion advocates coming out and saying these pills are dangerous. The approval was rushed. I think it's important to say here, this medication was approved in 2000. All of the leading medical associations say that it's extremely safe and that the approval process was done right. But you've really seen them take aim at that. And so what Project 2025 suggests a conservative president do, and a conservative HHS do, is, relook at the initial 2000 approval of mifepristone.
Could they just wave a magic wand and, it's no longer approved?
It would be more complicated than that. But something that they could do more easily is revisit the restrictions on mifepristone. So during the coronavirus, the FDA lifted a bunch of restrictions on mifepristone. The biggest one being that it can now be mailed. It can now be sent through the mail without an in-person visit. And that is a way that so many people are accessing this medication now, especially in states with bans. And when I talk to people in the anti-abortion movement, that is sort of their number one priority, is making it so that these pills can no longer be sent in the mail. And that's why whoever is going to lead HHS, it's really important, and we're going to be finding that out, I think, quite soon.
Project 2025 also mentions changing the federal government's interpretation of a regulation called Mtala. Can you explain what Mtala is and how it could be another avenue to restrict or protect abortion access?
Yeah, like I said, the Biden administration really has not been able to do all that much to protect abortion rights in, this post-Dobbs era that we are in. But one of the things that they did right off the bat is they came out and said, this federal emergency care law, which has been around since, for 40 years, says basically when somebody shows up to an emergency room in need of emergency care, you have to give it to them. What you saw is the Biden administration come out and say, this law covers emergency abortions. If a woman comes to a hospital in an emergency situation, you have to treat her. You have to provide an abortion if she needs one.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Mtala actually ever did protect women in red states, but it was like an idea.
Well, yeah, that's what they're claiming that it is, right? It's the Biden administration's interpretation of this law. And they have, issued letters and various documentation saying, this is a requirement. And if hospitals do not provide this care, then their funding can be revoked. So I think very quickly you will see the Trump administration, do a 180 on that and say, that's not really what Mtala says at all. And in practice, I've spoken with a lot of doctors in conservative states who say they feel really protected by Mtala to provide care for certain miscarriage situations that they wouldn't be comfortable providing if they didn't feel that, they had, an administration that saw that as covered by Mtala.
What about the Department of Justice? You mentioned them as also another agency that could be roped in to basically regulating abortion in a new way, or sort of restricting abortion in a backdoor way that people may not be anticipating.
Definitely. I mean, I think, since all of these bans took effect, I've been very interested in criminalization, and we really haven't seen these laws, these bans being enforced. And by that, I mean, we haven't seen, people going to jail for providing illegal abortions. We haven't seen people going to jail for distributing abortion pills illegally. But that could change. There's certainly a part of me that has wondered, were prosecutors holding off on that kind of case until the election was over? And now I think we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have pointed out the Comstock Act, which is an active law that restricts what can be sent through the mail, as something that a prosecutor could use to essentially orchestrate a nationwide ban without saying those words out loud. Is that something you're watching as well?
Oh, absolutely. The Comstock Act, could be hugely significant in a second Trump administration. Basically, it's a very old law that is still on the books that says, it's illegal to mail illicit materials, including, any materials used for an abortion. So that would cover pills, but It could also cover like anything you need for any kind of abortion, which is, all of those materials are shipped, right, to get to the clinics, to get to the doctors who are using them. So, a very aggressive administration could really take hold of that law, which we, certainly saw lay dormant under Biden.
It's funny. During the campaign, I feel like we all paid so much attention to Donald Trump and what he thought about abortion. But in the end, I'm not sure if that's what really matters. It's like all of these lower down people in the government making individual decisions about regulations and prosecutions. I'm frankly just not even sure that was ever clear to voters.
I think that's a really good point. And no, I agree. I don't think it was clear at all. And I think that in the next couple of weeks here, as we see who is going to be leading these agencies, we're going to get a lot of answers about what to expect on abortion from a second Trump administration.
Caroline, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm grateful for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really always appreciate the opportunity to kind of get in the weeds.
Caroline Kitchener covers abortion for The Washington Post. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.
Lowe's knows you want to get even more value for the holiday. That's why as a MyLowe's Rewards member, you get new member deals on holiday decor, tools, and more. And you earn points when you shop. More points equal more rewards to help you save on holiday and more. Not a member? Join for free today at Lowe's.com/MyLowe's Because Lowe's knows deals. Program subject to terms and conditions. Points are awarded on eligible purchases. See Lowe's.com/terms for full details. Subject to change.